Howdy, folks. Sean Murray is back at it again, teasing what we can only imagine is the next No Man's Sky update. And I have to say, he picked probably one of the most exciting emojis that he could have, for me personally, so it's time to speculate. I'm Kanaju. My voice sounds a little bit hoarse, but this is episode 37 of the Deep Space Travel Break, the #1 No Man's Sky podcast on YouTube. Because, let's face it, you don't have a lot of options. Brought to you by something you'll have to watch last week's episode to know about. And also brought to you by the support of folks like you. Thanks for watching. Thank you if you liked the video. Thanks if you're a subscriber. And super thanks to the valued members of the channel. Y'all are the best. So today we're talking all about Sean's latest tease and what it could mean for No Man's Sky moving forward, right? Plus, I give my initial impressions on Assassin's Creed Shadows, which Ubisoft did send me a review copy for. I simply didn't beat it in time to release a video, so I'll just give my impressions at the end. But enough about that, let's talk about No Man's Sky. So, on Saturday, March 22nd, Sean tweeted a bone emoji. For those who aren't aware, anytime Sean tweets a lone emoji out of nowhere, it usually means that we're about to see an update the following week, right? If it's on the weekend, we're probably going to get it like that Wednesday. If he tweets it on like a Monday or Tuesday, it probably means it's very imminent. So in this case, he tweeted it on a Saturday. We'll probably see it on Wednesday, March. Let's see what day that is. 26th or March 27th, right? If we do see something. Currently, Expedition 17 Titan is running, but that's scheduled to end on the 26th. So that's perfect timing, right? As soon as that ends, we'll get some kind of new content update. Now, I always like to tell people to keep your expectations low because it could just be another expedition. It could be a very small content update, or it could be something beyond our wildest imaginations, right? But don't expect the third one, but be happy when we do get it, right? So I always like to speculate when Sean does this. His interpretations of updates through emojis are always something to behold. They range from very obvious to barely even tangentially related. And so this time when I see a bone, what could a bone mean, right? My initial thought, my first thought is archaeology, digging up bones, right? Archaeology is something we currently have in the game, right? You can dig up skeletons of differing rarities. And to an extent, we also have archaeology where you can dig up ruins, right? Now, both of these, I felt, could be expanded further, particularly the archaeology to do with digging up ruins, right? Those were released in 2018's next update, and they were really cool. And they used to be more variable, actually, because you used to have structures at varying depths. So it would kind of mix it up a bit. But due to various bugs with those kind of spawning in the sky and things like that, they eventually standardized it, and they took off the variable rooftops. So now every single ancient ruin looks pretty much the same. And I've been hoping for years that this is something that they would work on, because I think finding an ancient ruin and having to dig stuff up and look for treasure is just a fun gameplay loop, right? And there are a lot of structures in the game that sort of support this gameplay loop. Planetary archive buildings, they will sell you maps to archaeological dig sites, but they're not that interesting to engage with at the moment. And then we very recently, in the Worlds Part 2 update, we received relic worlds, which are worlds completely covered in ancient ruins. But while they did give us new blueprints to discover, they didn't introduce any new kind of gameplay to do with these, right? There aren't new things to dig up or anything like that, right? Archaeology was unchanged, which I thought was kind of odd, but you know, they're adding so much stuff in Worlds Part 2, you really can't complain. Check out my last video, episode 36, about some of the possible pitfalls of releasing big updates. Although, spoiler alert, Walker and I, oh yeah, we featured a guest. Walker and I love big updates. But yeah, my first thought is archaeology, right? What could they do with archaeology? I think there's a lot of stuff. It could be simply introducing new types of things to dig up, right? Maybe in addition to digging up things that are worth money, maybe we could dig up unique ancient upgrades or unique blueprints, right? Maybe we find some unique little ornament that we can then, put into our our homes, similar to how you can collect anomalous, what are those things called? Reality glitches on exotic planets, right? Like you can get those glitchy cubes, those bone spines. What are those things called? Bone spines? You know what I'm saying. You can find collectibles on exotic worlds and then bring them home. It'd be great if there were treasures you could dig up and bring back to your home as well, right? Another thing I think of with archaeology might be underwater archaeology. That's something that I think makes perfect sense, right? The oceans, especially on planets where they are 100% ocean now, those would still have buried bones and buried treasure and buried artifacts, you would think, but they would be at the bottom of the ocean. So introducing a new type of marine archaeology would be pretty interesting because now you have the same, or now you have an additional challenge, right? Of having to manage air, having to manage pressure, while at the same time looking for what could be the most valuable or unique types of treasures in the game. I could see that being a very compelling gameplay loop for scavengers and treasure hunters, right? Another way you could take archaeology would be the introduction of new points of interest, right? Like large skeletons. We've seen some really, really large creatures in the game, right? We've seen asteroid larvae, we've seen Titan sandworms, and a few others, right? And we've also seen giant skeletons before, or giant skulls rather. If you've ever, this might be a slight spoiler alert, but there's something called the Grave of the Ocean King you can encounter in space, which is a humongous, bigger than life skull. And it's so large you can fly through it in your ship. It is ginormous. And it would be interesting to see giant skeletons scattered on planets, right? Almost as points of interest. Or maybe there are valuable things to discover, maybe there aren't. But I think it could be interesting nonetheless, especially with undersea exploration. Giant whale skeletons and stuff like that would be pretty sick, I think. So yeah, more stuff to dig up would be great. The other way I would love for them to take it would be for more complicated ancient archaeology, right? So instead of just digging up more types of bones and things, which don't get me wrong, I would love more bones to dig up. But if there were different types of treasure, or if you had to find certain keys, or if there were traps or something, like more complicated archaeology would be pretty cool. Or maybe you have to chart specific routes, right? Like maybe you get a map and it says, oh, we walked north however many paces and then walked east or whatever. Now that we have east and west markers on our compass, you could give directions like that and they'd be procedurally generated, right? It would generate a node and then it would generate a treasure a specific distance away from it that maybe you couldn't pick up with your scanner until you were right over it, right? So then you'd be following essentially a treasure map. That could be kind of fun. Another thing that would be interesting to do with fossils would be the idea of cloning, right? We already have a genome sequencer in the anomaly where you can take an egg and sort of change its genetics. But maybe I've been playing too much Pokemon, but I love fossil Pokemon. The idea of taking some ancient DNA, right, like Jurassic Park, and then bringing it to life, right? These new strange creatures that have maybe been extinct. And I think that would play interestingly into the theme of Worlds Part 2, right? Which, slight spoilers, has to do with some stuff from the past, right? Coming back to the present. So, I mean, that's just another thing, right? My ideal scenario would be more procedural ruins, right? Even though it's a bone icon, right? We could still see bone as ancient, right? Because maybe it's a human skeleton or a Gex skeleton or something like that. But I would love if we got procedural ruin points of interest with either lore or traps or some kind of new gameplay loop associated with them. Maybe it's just a refresh to archaeology. That would be great. I love that sense of exploration. And I'm a huge sucker for ancient ruins. So if you told me relic worlds are now full of these cool procedural archaeological challenges, I would be very happy about that. I would be extremely happy about that, especially if they added all kinds of new treasure to discover. Imagine if there was a new set of ancient multi-tools we could find, or ancient multi-tool pieces, kind of like how we can build staffs, and we could build that stone staff. Perhaps that was, or we couldn't build it. It's the reward for Expedition 17. But imagine if that was like a preview of like ancient building parts, right? And then you take those and you can build your own ancient power staff or something to that effect. That could be interesting. That could be a pretty cool gameplay loop. Multi-tools you could only build by digging up ancient parts. I could see that being interesting. Or additional like customization, ancient armor or ancient ship parts. And then you can eventually, now that we can build our own ships, then you use those ancient ship parts to build an ancient vessel of some kind. There's all kinds of cool stuff they could do with archaeology that I think would be really, really cool. Let's see here. Yeah, I wrote down ancient ruins. Of course, ancient. See, if I want to dream, and again, keep your expectations very, very low because it might have nothing to do with archaeology. But let's say we let ourselves dream a little bit, all right? Imagine larger ancient structures. Some people might say ancient cities. Now, I'm not expecting that in any way, but that would be really cool, right? That's the dream. But realistically, an improvement to archaeology would be, it's on my checklist, right? Another thing I've always wanted would be planetary dungeons. And I've often speculated those could come in the form of ancient ruins, right? That are essentially almost like in an RPG, a dungeon, right? So there might be some monsters, there might be some traps, there might be some puzzles, right? But each one's different, and then there's some reward at the end. That could be the procedural ship part, the multi-tool part, the ancient upgrade, the ancient armor customization, right? There's so many cool rewards you could put one per dungeon, right? And I think that would be pretty sweet. So, I mean, that would be my other like dream update, if we're dreaming that big, right? Essentially. Let's see. I also wrote down here dog treats. Maybe we're going to get a dog update. Kind of doubt that. I put medical science. Oh, the study of anatomy, perhaps. Maybe we're fixing broken bones. Maybe now when you fall from a large distance, you can break your bones. That would be interesting. That would be terrible, but maybe they're just adding a giant crunch sound when you land, and that's the update. No Man's Sky crunch. Or maybe the bones are related to skeletons, but we're fighting like an army of ancient skeleton gek, right? That would be interesting. The undead. I could see that working with the Abyss storyline, where we're facing an army of the undead. That way we can get that gameplay we've wanted, where we're fighting people, with guns on planets, which again, they have the rigs for. They have, in a sense, the AI, which we've seen with the Sentinel mechs and things of that sort, right? They have the rigs because they would use the same rigs as our player models, the same ones they use for the NPCs. But that way we're not just like fighting Gek or whatever. We might be fighting Ghost Gek or Fallen Viking or something. Ghost Pirate Korvax. The skeletons of Ghost Korvax. I could see that being interesting. But y'all let me know what you think this could be, because I'm making this video on very short notice. I was actually late to the party. I didn't notice Sean's tweet the day of. I'm recording this the following evening, but I always forget something when I'm speculating. So please let me know what you think it could be. If there's something in Worlds Part 2 that you think this might be alluding to. If we're talking about the sequence of events in Worlds Part 1 and 2, one thing we talked about that was not expanded, or two things that were not expanded upon in Worlds Part 1 or 2, were caves and points of interest. So I could see these being new points of interest, or I could see these being some kind of new cave activity, or maybe there are archaeological activities that take place in caves. That would be really sweet. I've been hoping for a cave overhaul for quite a while. Don't get me wrong, caves are beautiful at the moment, but gameplay-wise, I wish they had something more unique to offer. But perhaps that's how these things are going to be implemented. That would be pretty sweet if the bones were a cave update somehow. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And I don't know, but I'm hoping it's an archaeology update. That's like my number one hope. Or if we think about bone clubs, maybe it's something ancient insofar as like cavemen, or again, maybe ancient Pokemon. You know what I'm saying? I've been playing too much Pokemon, but something to that effect could be interesting. Could be. Yeah, y'all let me know. Y'all let me know. And are y'all hyped for this update? Do you think it's going to be an update? Do you think it's going to be an expedition? Or maybe it'll be both, right? And what's going to be interesting is we received Worlds Part 1 last year, and then we got Aquarius, right? And then we have Worlds Part 2. I'm very curious to see what the scale of this update will be. Walker and I talked in detail in episode 36, which if you haven't checked it out, it's an hour and a half long. But I promise you, I think it's one of the most interesting updates, or one of the most interesting videos I've done. And with Walker, it's always a good conversation. But we talked about we wondered what the next update would be like, right? Is it going to be similarly big? Most likely not, right? It's coming so soon after it. But if not, like, how would the community take it? Like, obviously, the majority of folks would be pretty happy about it, but some players might be disappointed it's not on the scale of a Worlds Part 3, for instance, right? But I'm sure whatever we get is going to be great. So I'm looking forward to it, and I know Hello Games are working hard to give us cool stuff, so I can't complain because it is all 100% free. So shout out to Hello Games for the free stuff, right? Alrighty. So another thing I wanted to talk about in today's episode are my impressions of Assassin's Creed Shadows. So I did receive an advanced copy from Ubisoft, thanks Ubisoft, and they didn't specify I needed to make a video, but it's kind of implied that I would. But I wasn't able to meet the embargo because I couldn't beat the game in time to release a video. But I wanted to give my initial impressions on the game. So I'm about 12 to 15 hours in. I forget how many precisely. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, right? These are just my top level impressions. Overall, I'm enjoying the game. I think the gameplay is as good as it's ever been. I think that it feels a lot crunchier, right? A lot more precise than previous Assassin's Creed games. The parkour is pretty good. Combat's pretty fun. And I even like how missions are structured insofar as they, instead of just giving you a map marker for everything, they give a description of like the general area you should look, and then you have to find it yourself. You can either use scouts to help pinpoint the location, or what I usually do is I just listen for, because normally there's someone like talking loudly about the thing you're trying to find, which is always helpful. But I mean, it's a really cool feeling because I feel like I'm exploring, looking for things. It reminds me of old video games. So those are the positives, right? I also like that you can build your own base. I think that's cool. The negatives would be that the story isn't bad by any means, but I feel like it's really taking its time. And I was pretty much trying to beeline over spring break, and I still felt like it was really taking its time. Also, the character animations aren't the best, unfortunately. They look pretty dated. But if you're like me and you mostly play Assassin's Creed for the setting, right, rather than the story, how's the setting? I would say not medieval Japan. It's 16th century Japan. It's a beautiful setting. It's incredible. So they did a lot of work on the weather effects. The wind and everything feels spectacular. I love how reactive the environments are, right? You can cut down bamboo, you can cut grass. As you're fighting, you're throwing people, they're like knocking stuff over and breaking through doors and stuff. It's really great. I don't think we've ever had an Assassin's Creed world this reactive to the player. So I've been really enjoying that aspect of it. I do miss my bird, but especially as a content creator, I used to get incredible shots with the bird, and I just want to like get like aerial shots of all the cities because I'm making a cities video. But yeah, overall, I mean, I've been enjoying the game. It's fun. It's a bit slow. The story isn't hitting as hard as I hoped it would. It feels a bit you know what I mean? But if you're like me and you're mostly playing to explore and to fight and to assassinate, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'll probably have more to say when I actually complete the game. But those are my initial impressions. So if you've been playing the game, let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think it's a return to form for Assassin's Creed? Do you think it was worth the extra wait since they delayed it for quality assurance purposes? Let me know what you think. But that's all I have for today's Deep Space Travel Break episode 37. Thank you so much for joining me. A little bit shorter of an episode than last week. And I don't know if this is going to be a weekly occurrence. I've been I've had a difficult time producing content lately during the semester since I'm working so much, but I am able to produce these podcast episodes relatively easily. So perhaps during the semester when I'm unable to produce my more measured, edited, scripted content, I'll produce these more often. Since I do have a lot of fun communicating with y'all, talking about my passions, and it helps keep me on the horse as far as No Man's Sky is concerned, which is always great. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below if you'd be down for that sort of thing. But it looks like we might be getting an update this week, so I need to figure that out on my schedule. I'm looking forward to it, though. I'm sure it's going to be exciting, and the bone emoji really is. I mean, I know I shouldn't be hyped, but I'm kind of hyped. I hope it's something cool. But remember, keep your expectations low. Don't be disappointed if it's not the world's greatest archaeology update and it's literally just adding bones to living ships or something like that. Because you never know. And they haven't promised us anything, and it's free. So, you know the spiel. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like on the video because that really helps. If you want to leave a dislike, I can live with that. And if you're interested in subscribing, I would love that. I'm on the road to 50K. Hopefully I'll hit 50K subscribers this year, but I gotta get back to making content, right? So thank you so much for your patience, and hopefully I'll see you right after the update because I'm sure whatever it is, I'm gonna have a lot of thoughts. So thank you so much for joining me, and if you haven't completed Expedition 17, now is the time to do it. Took me about 4 hours to complete, so it's not too difficult. And there were some pretty cool rewards. So, yeah. Anyways, I've been Kanaju. This has been the Deep Space Travel Break, episode 37. And you've been great. So, thank you so much. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.